Oh, hey, you're here. Awesome. Thanks for joining us week 2 of our chapels. Today we're going to be having a family discussion, and we're going to have 3 members on our staff here at the King's Academy sharing with you guys about experiences. After chapel today, make sure that you go back with your home group and have some rich discussions. Thank you guys for joining us. I hope you enjoy.
Welcome, students. We're so glad to be able to share this time with you in chapel. 2020 has been crazy. I don't have to tell you that, you know that. But I think, at least for me, it's been particularly crazy this summer with a lot of the issues that have been going on, particularly in our nation surrounding African Americans. And we as a staff just wanted to get together and just have an open dialogue in front of you so you can see how we feel with respect to what's going on in our nation. If you don't know me, my name is Mr. Hill, but I'm hoping my peers will just call me Chris at this time so it could just be casual. I've been at the King's Academy for 5 years, Teach Bible 11, absolutely love it. And I would like to turn it over to my colleagues to introduce themselves, and then we'll begin our dialogue.
Alrighty. Hi, I'm Stacy Reed. This is my 5th year. Wait, did we start at the same time?
We came in together.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Nice. This is my 5th year. Graduated from TKA in, don't want to give my age away. And yeah, I am the dance teacher. And yeah.
All right, hi, I'm Kevin Johnson, work in athletics. This is going into my 10th year here, which has gone by extraordinarily fast. My wife actually went to school here. She graduated 05, and we now have a little 2-year-old daughter, beautiful Emery Hope. And I have loved working here at King's.
Yeah. So I think that our hope was to, before we just talk about the summer, just share a little bit about us personally. I think that there's a tendency sometimes to, when you see someone, you kind of make assumptions about who they are and where they come from and their ideas on issues. But I want you to know about me, and then I can give some context then into why I think maybe a little bit of what I think. So I just want to share a little bit about my background and things that I think have been formative for me in understanding what's happening in our nation right now. So I am originally from Virginia. Grew up in the 80s, and my parents, when I was 2 years old, they moved from where they were living in Richmond, Virginia, and they moved us to a small suburb called Sandston, predominantly white neighborhood. And so much of my upbringing, I was the only, or one of the only black students, or one of the only black kids in the neighborhood. And I think for me, it was something that I could not ignore. It was always in the back of my mind. And I think sometimes when I say like I'm from the South or I'm from Virginia, people assume a lot. I actually had very positive engagements and relationships with my peers, my white neighbors. I overwhelmingly had good relationships, but there were just some moments where things were awkward. And I think I always knew that I was different. And actually I was trying to reflect on, why did I have that upbringing? Why was I positioned in this place? And I had a conversation with my dad recently, and he shared with me that the reason why he and my mom decided to move to this area was they wanted certain things for us. They wanted us to be able to have a home, a place that was larger, a place where we could expand. They wanted us to be in a neighborhood with other children. They wanted us to be in a city where there were certain amenities, that we had access to good schools, or we had libraries that we could go to, or we had neighborhood shops, ice cream parlors, these kinds of things. And when their real estate agent was taking them to different places, the places that they were looking for a certain quality of life, they didn't look like us. And I think that was something that I just started to reflect on. And I'm not saying that that's anyone else's experience. I'm just talking about my experience. My parents wanted certain things for me, and almost they were forced to kind of choose, am I going to allow them to have these certain things, or am I going to have them have this kind of cultural experience? And for my family, they felt that, with our family network, they could supplement the the relationships, but they couldn't provide a quality library for me. They couldn't provide these other things. And so that's the choice that they made. And I think that very much has shaped my upbringing in the sense that I want to be engaged with diverse people groups. But I've always been someone who noted that I was different. And I probably could say a lot more, but I feel like I've talked enough, so I want to pass it over to someone else to share a little bit about themselves.
Okay. If I were to be honest, I knew we were going to talk about this. And I was just like, when I think about my upbringing, I feel like I can say that I felt maybe a little sheltered. I will definitely say privileged. My mom, we grew up in the Bay Area. My mom made good money. Like, we had a nice house. We lived in predominantly white neighborhoods. The church I went to is predominantly white. The schools I went to were predominantly white. And I feel like for me, I felt accepted. I definitely knew, I am the African American in this community, but I didn't feel anything, negative about that, at least for a while. I think my mom was really good, just a hardworking single parent mom. I think she was really good at focusing on our faith and our walk. That was a strong point. Like, we always went to church, we always had these conversations, and she was really good about helping us embrace our culture. But I don't think we spent enough time talking about racial differences, shall I say, or the other cultures that are out there, which wasn't bad, but I just didn't know. I was just happy-go-lucky in my own world, and I think that's kind of how I've always been. I'm just here. I don't really go around and I'm just like, okay, well, where are all the Black people? I mean, maybe sometimes, but I'll be honest. I mean, we go into a meeting and you're just like, okay, I'm the only one. Like, you feel it, but I never felt it and went like, oh, that's negative, or oh, that's this, because that's just what I was used to. Always feeling a little outnumbered, shall I say. It was kind of similar to what you're saying. I think my first interaction, though, or my first exposure to, racist attacks or anything of that nature was in grade school. And I remember kids coming up and just hurling insults. And I remember just not getting it, not understanding, because I never had these conversations with my mom. I never had these conversations with my sister. It was just like, why are people going out of their way to say things about me? And so I think my attitude then was, because I felt outnumbered or I didn't get it, I just kind of took it, I guess. Just was like, okay. And so I was just quiet, and I was like, this is what you're going to do then. This is what you're going to do. And I am outnumbered. And I had a great relationship with my mom, and I know that I can run to her with anything, but it still was uncomfortable. And I think all my years after that, I just had this really unhealthy habit of just going with the flow. And that's, again, it's not bad, but it's not good. Like, I wasn't starting, fights. I wasn't trying to be a troublemaker. Well, maybe one fight, but I wasn't, I know, I'm sorry, being honest. But yeah, I don't think I had the best healthy way of processing what was going on around me. And that's what I just see even in my years now. So that's, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, and similar to both Chris and Stacy, I also grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. Went to a predominantly white elementary school, middle school, and then not until I got to high school was my students and my student base much more diverse, and that was actually a really good experience for me. But my parents, my parents were together until I was in fourth grade. They were divorced, but my parents were both very active in my life, and my faith journey began with them impressing that as being something important to me. So having kind of God always in the center of what we were doing was normal. We just happened to be doing it with predominantly white people. And when I say I grew up in the church, I mean the friends that I had in second grade were some of the same friends that I still have now, that are great friends of mine, that I wouldn't take any of those relationships back because, just we weren't the same skin color. Because as a kid, as a child, it's easier to just look at people for who they are apart from, your skin. You just want to play and have fun and kind of do whatever. But my first kind of experience was kind of recognizing, again, the difference of being maybe the only Black kid in a predominantly white area was probably at church, actually, with friends that were very near and dear to me. I mean, again, these were people that I had grown up with since I was in second grade, and I knew very well, and I felt very comfortable with. I loved them, and again, these are friends that I still have to this day. And I remember being in youth group, and we're all kind of joking, laughing around, and somebody says, "Oh, Kevin, you're so white," right? Or "You're the whitest Black guy that we've ever met." And at first I was kind of like, well, what does that mean? What about me is not Black, right? I mean, I do have, I have the skin. What about me wasn't Black? And that was the first time that I ever started to kind of question, what this whole thing means. And it was hard in that moment to, first of all, know what to say, or even to kind of step on a limb and almost, in essence, kind of alienate yourself amongst your friends to say, "Hey, I actually am Black. I don't know what you mean by saying that I'm not white." But again, I kind of, like Stacy said, you just kind of push it down and you just kind of keep going because you're not really sure how to react to it. But then it kind of kept happening in high school and college. "Oh, Kevin, you're the whitest Black guy we've ever met. You're so white." And I'm like, what does this mean? Just because I don't talk a certain way and look a certain way. And that ended up being the crux of what it was, is I didn't fit this kind of, because when we were growing up, at least, the stereotypical Black guy was like a thug, right? A gangster. And if you didn't fit at least that mold, if you didn't talk a certain way or dress a certain way, people would question kind of your Blackness. And that was more my plight from, probably my freshman year through even college, of figuring out kind of where do I fit in this narrative of, basically all the positive attributes about me, being a nice guy, or, using correct grammar, or whatever it is, are being attributed to white, even though some of the struggles of being Black are still mine that I, deal with on a day-to-day basis. So trying to figure out where I kind of fit into that was challenging. And again, it wasn't until even after college where I got a better grasp of it, because kind of like Stacy said, I didn't talk about race relations with my parents very much either. It wasn't a dinner table topic, more or less. And so figuring that out and kind of navigating some of those hard questions was challenging. And again, these friends that I have, I know they meant no malice by what they said. They had no hatred towards me. It wasn't like they were trying to insult me. They were just making jokes, but they didn't realize what those jokes really were attacking at that point, or what they were addressing. And I've since talked to them, and we're all on good terms, and I'm very proud to have them as friends, and I will for the rest of my life. But that was kind of where my journey started in figuring this whole thing out. So,
yeah, I had a lot of emotions when you were sharing about what your friend said to you, like you're the whitest Black person they know. I never had that phrase said, but that was kind of something that I wrestled with for a long time. Am I Black enough? And I felt that actually from other African Americans. So my experience educationally was when I was in elementary school and middle school, it was predominantly white population. But when I was in high school, it switched to being predominantly Black. And I was at a specialty program at this particular high school where a lot of the students were white or from other ethnic backgrounds. And so I really remember on occasions feeling that, okay, am I gonna be with my classmates and my friends, or am I gonna be with these other folks, or am I gonna make new relationships? And I felt like my ethnicity was constantly being tested every single day with who I chose to associate with. And that was really difficult for me.
I definitely struggled with that too. A lot of people projecting what they think a Black person should be like on me, and I didn't get it. And there's times when everybody thinks, oh, it's cool, so you're just like, yeah, I'm gonna buy into this, why not? And then you just go home at the end of the day and you're just like, that was so fake. I'm me.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that. Almost feeling like your own image of who you are isn't necessarily defining what a Black person is. It's whatever somebody else's perception was at the time. And that was, difficult for me to kind of feel comfortable knowing, okay, I am who I am, and this is me, and I don't need to fit somebody else's, stereotype in order to be a Black person, right? Because, still when I grew up, I still had, you go into a mall. Me and my brother would go to the mall often. We would always get followed by mall security, or at least on 3 different occasions, you get pulled over by, or not pulled over, but like when I was in a shopping center, you get pulled into the security center and they want to check if you stole something, right? Or, just instances of where, we weren't doing anything wrong. We would just be walking around, but there's kind of this assumption, and those, I guess, struggles are kind of things that came up through, our childhood where they were hard. So it's like I get the one side of, kind of being judged unfairly, but on the other side, I want to be able to define who I am, and have that be my definition of being Black,
Yeah.
And it was just it was interesting growing up, but I will say that I've seen so much progress, right? My wife is white, and we have we've been together for 12 years now, which is great, and I haven't experienced a lot of hate or a lot of why are you doing this kind of thing of being in an interracial relationship. So even from just my high school years until now, I've seen so much growth in people being at least more aware of how you can be offensive to somebody, or being a little bit more sensitive. Again, still some room to go, but for sure. But seeing growth is always encouraging to me, definitely.
Yeah.
So
when you were sharing about your story of being followed repeatedly, like in shopping centers, like I felt like that could be happening to me, but I didn't notice it so much. But I think something that I did do is I kind of anticipated reactions that I thought people would have, and I would try to put myself in situations where I wouldn't have to be in that. So like, for example, like I would distance myself from certain groups. I'll be specific. I would distance myself from white women, older people, because I felt that, they will look at me a certain way. They might think that I'm dangerous. So I just remember, like, again, just walking on the street or navigating around people, just stepping to the side. And I feel like now as an adult, like, why am I doing this? I shouldn't have had to do that. But I think I kind of just internalized that this is how it is. And I just want to put myself in a situation where I won't have to have an issue. And I think that just kind of now talking about some of the events happening today, and you all can address that or not, I either, believed or was taught a message that, I have to be extra careful, or there are certain things that I can't do that other people can do in order for me to just kind of be safe. And And I'll just say this one story, which I didn't do it on this occasion. When I was an adult, I was living in an area that was okay, but there was some crime. And one occasion outside of our apartment, we witnessed an assault happening. And so my wife saw the assault, and she asked the question, do I tell my husband? Because if I tell my husband, I know he will run out there. And if he runs out there, I don't know what the police will do if he arrives. And that's the kind of things that we talk about in our relationship. Like, I did go out there, everything was fine, but it's those things that, I have to ask myself, do I really want to put myself in this position?
Yeah.
I think, or at least what stood out to me, or something that kind of just struck a chord with me with what you were saying, Kevin, is that I definitely had, a couple instances where I would be walking in a store and I could tell someone was following, but I think the first time it was just kind of like, okay, this is annoying. Second time, third time, it was just like, are you kidding me? You don't even know me. I go to the King's Academy. I'm a straight A student. Right? I'm student council. I wasn't. But I'm like, you don't even know this and you're following me. But I remember having this horrible thought as this person was following me, and they just wouldn't let up. It was so annoying. They just would not let up. And I remember thinking to myself, you know what? What if I did just steal something? Or what if I just mess with this person and act as if I'm stealing something? This is what you want me to be like, so why don't I just become that for you? And I remember, I didn't steal because I would have a panic attack, because that's me. But I didn't end up stealing, but I remember thinking that. And then I remember later thinking, oh my goodness, if me, just little me, thought, I feel like you're pushing me to become what you view me as, or then there has to be people out there who think the same thing. You guys keep putting me in this box, or you keep putting Black men or Black women in this box, and we feel like we can't get out. So then of course this is how I'm going to act. This is, I'm not going to feel free. I'm going to be uncomfortable helping someone who's being assaulted. I'm going to not feel safe shopping. It's kind of a baffling, numbing thought or experience after that. It was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think, the dangerous part in, limiting people or putting them in that box of I'm going to see you in this way until I have evidence otherwise is, again, number one, we're all human, right? Mm-hmm. We're all, we all make mistakes. We all don't do everything perfectly. And so, one mistake can kind of get you brushed off into this other category, right? Which was, for me, why a lot of me growing up, I was like, gosh, if I can just make sure I do everything as good as I can, right? Number one, I can help overwrite this image of what a Black man is, right? Or what a Black person is. And just say, see, we are nice, you don't have anything to be scared, worried about, or I'm not going to steal from you, or I'm not going to do anything bad. And I had that thought in my head for so long, right or wrong, but me thinking if I can just do everything as good as I can hopefully help other people see that Black people are okay to be around, and that was, I guess, something that was, I was aware of it, and I don't know how much that did or didn't play into all these different conversations and relationships that I had, but it was kind of like, okay, another good positive reaction or interaction with somebody where they can see that we're all the same, right? And I guess that in particular was something that I kind of took on as my own, not battle, but whatever the words, I can't think of it right now, but something that I wanted to help kind of prove, and just kind of redefining kind of that image of what a Black man could look like. So,
And I'm not sure, like, in my mind how much I was seeking to, like, prove certain things, but I think I recognized that when I became a Christian and I started getting more involved in my faith and sensing a call to ministry and leadership, that people acknowledge that as something positive. And I think even as a young person, they were surprised, but even they were like, "Oh, a young black man is doing this." And I think I recognized that and continue to feed into that. And I'm not ashamed of what I've become, but I think some of the zeal in becoming it was out of a need to kind of seem exceptional. And I don't think that I should have had to feel that way.
A little unfair.
Yeah.
So I guess, and I'm curious at how you guys feel as well, because we all have similarities in our stories,
Yeah.
but they're all a little bit different. But what, I guess in the wake of where we are trying to be more racially kind of aware and sensitive, what do you feel is not the one thing, but a huge thing that that you're looking for, or when you have people ask you, okay, hey, what can I do? Or what is, how can I be more sensitive, or whatever it is, what have you been telling people, or how are those conversations gone, or what do you see as something that can help more on like a personal level that people feel like they can actually be in control of?
Mm-hmm. I'll say this because I literally was just having that conversation with someone, and we were talking about all that's going on in the world and just, what we're seeing. And I can't help but sit back and be like, I have no idea. Like, I'll be honest with you. Like, I have no idea. I have no idea what kind of, yes, there's things I could do, but, and I'm sure there's other people out there who feel the same way, like, what can I do? And, after having this conversation with, a fellow friend, I was like, I feel like what we're doing already is volumes. I think we're entering into a time where, I will say this personally, like, I feel heard.
That's
like,
great.
and like actively listening. We can all talk, right? Everybody's like, oh, we need to have these conversations. I'm like, yeah, we can talk to our blue in the face, but we need to listen, like actually actively listen. And I'm starting to feel that now, and I feel a change. Like, I'm learning so much. Again, I come from a very sheltered background, so it's not new to me, but it's a lot. Like, we're in some troubled times. Like, this is a lot,
Yeah, I'm learning a lot too. And, what would we tell someone to get them working on what we want to happen in our nation? I think that I just want people to, like, talk about it, right? And talking is not posting. So talking is talking. It's like, let's sit down and talk about it, and let me hear how you feel about George Floyd, and let me tell you how I feel, and let's talk about what's going on in Portland, and let's not assume that I know what you feel, and let's brainstorm solutions. Like, this is what I want. I want us to have a dialogue about these issues and not pretend like just not pretend like they're going to go away. They're going to go away on their own. They're not going to go away on their own.
And like I said, like just a little bit before, when I was talking about how I've had some of my friends reach out to me, and they were like, Kevin, they said, we had no idea that what we were saying, when we would say, oh, you're so white, they were like mortified that they said it, and they're like, I just didn't know, and like blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, like I knew your guys' hearts, and I knew you didn't mean anything, but at the time I didn't know how to really process it. And they're like, so what now? And I was in essence, I tell, well, I think you guys, and all these friends that I have are all Christians as well. And I said, I think number one, it's like, great, you're following your conviction of trying to do something about what you felt was wrong in your past, right? Or just in something you said to somebody. But I think kind of understanding that somebody's race is inherent to them and special to them,
Yeah.
right? And shouldn't be challenged because it doesn't fit maybe what you think, right? And like, by no means am I calling you a racist, right? Because you made a poor joke, in high school, right? The one thing we know about high school is things get said. High school is high school, right?
Yeah.
Things get said.
Yeah.
And sometimes they are with mean intention, but sometimes they're not. I think it's, up to kind of knowing what those things look like. But anyway, but to now, it's like, I would never want to put somebody in a box or not let them express who they are, or not let me see who they are, because I think you already are this, right? Mm-hmm. It's just as bad for me to impress those, viewpoints on you as it would for somebody to look at me and do the same thing. So I guess I continually try and tell people, and I think it's a more of a personal issue and a home issue, right? I think a lot of these, I think being culturally sensitive and where it starts at home, like having conversation with your parents, and hopefully your parents are telling you to talk to your friends that are different ethnicities than you and figure out who they are, and just having healthy conversations at home, and definitely it being like a heart issue of, the only cure for the amount of evil that we've seen, or not the only cure, I guess the cure for the heart that we're seeing is Jesus, right? Meaning, if that cop that kneeled on George Floyd's neck didn't hate people the way he did, George Floyd would be alive, hopefully, right? And just the amount of hate that you see can only be reversed by Jesus. And that gives me, I guess, hope, knowing that there is something to hope for, but knowing that it is going to be a continual battle that you have to fight against, that you're actively fighting against, and not just being passive, right? I think the more passive we are on this issue, and again, I'm glad it's been brought up because it's something that we needed to address as a school, a country, and everything. But if it's passive, it's going to kind of die down, and then it'll shoot back up again, right? And so hopefully we can just actively be engaged in, number one, or obviously trying to get people to understand who Christ is and kind of how that changes your heart, but also along with that of understanding somebody's heritage and their nationality and all that is so precious to them, and that shouldn't be challenged because it doesn't look like something that you think it should, for sure.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good point.
Yeah, I really like what you said about not being passive, because,
Yes.
especially like what I said, that's just how I felt, just dig down and hide or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think what I admire about, it sounds so old saying this, youth today. I think what I admire is that
The energy.
Yeah, well, I guess the energy.
I'm gonna sound real old now.
Right? Their energy, but that we're in this, we're seeing it a lot now where people are feeling more comfortable and taking those steps and are being more courageous and speaking up and just, again, having these conversations. And I think that's one desire I would have with, for our student body is say something. If someone says something, like you said, you have good friends. Even they said things that made you go, but that there was good intent. It was just a bad joke.
Right.
Say something, and say it out of love. Like, hey, I see you, I love you, I acknowledge you, but when you say that, can we just not, or just letting you know, and if we don't, then I feel like I can only blame myself, Yeah.
I also think there's something I specifically want for Christians, in terms of a Christian response. And I think that, a lot of us know certain things that we hear from Scripture, like all people are made in the image of God, and we understand that we are one body in Christ. But simply knowing those doctrines isn't sufficient to do the work that we need to do. And I think a lot of times people will say, well, I know that this person, my brother or sister in Christ, but, somehow there's a disconnect between mind in action and doctrine in praxis. And how do we make that bridge? I think one step would be, can I listen to diverse teachers of Scripture? Can I participate in diverse communions? I'm not talking about the communion service, but like, can I go and worship with a friend of another ethnicity? And can I hear how they do communion, how they live life together? And I think that will go a long way, because not saying that your pastor isn't teaching correctly, but all of us have our hobby horses, the things that we like to talk about or the way that we look at something. And God doesn't just fix our outlook and say, hey, you need to look at all these things. Sometimes we need a neighbor that God's going to work through to help us see that. So,
for sure. And sorry, say something you just said reminded me. I mean, the passivity, right, of me not saying anything took 12 years to reconcile, right? Like, it took a long time. It's just like, if you don't say anything, nothing's going to change, right? It's, learning how to be active or do something, or again, see somebody else's pastor or worship with somebody else and just kind of figure out what it means, not just by, again, it's good to always talk, but then maybe do also, right, after that. And I think it was so good about just saying something, right? It is not a matter if, it is a matter of when you're going to be in a situation when somebody says something insensitive. And again, it's not like you are trying to, change or do something massive. It's not like it's a huge event of like having to stand up for what's right, or if something shouldn't be said. But I think it's good practice to do it, right? In the same way, if somebody called somebody else a butthead or whatever it was, you say, hey, don't call him that. In the same way, if somebody says something insensitive racially, say something about it, And I think it is great that we have all this awareness now, and people hopefully are more aware of being, racially sensitive. So it's less taboo to kind of address it when we see it, and we can kind of attack this thing head on. Because that's the great thing about America, is that we have tons of different races and ethnicities here, and we're a very diverse nation. But we also need to be able to appreciate that, right? And specifically for the Black community in this sense, trying to get out of this negative stigma and kind of into more of a positive light is going to take work and effort and things. But again, it's just taking those action steps and just doing the little things. I think that'll be huge. So
I think we should wrap it up.
Yeah. We could just stay here all day.
We could talk for hours.
I know.
But I really liked our conversation together, and I think that we're going to have another one where we can dialogue not only with one another, but hopefully with some students to get their insight into what's going on now. I know that you all have a particular lens that, we may not see through. So yeah, we look forward to doing this again and engaging with you all. Thank you for listening to our stories.
Mm-hmm.